Hello everyone, let's keep this nice and short. I've been inspired by Kai Cenat to start reading again. Right now I'm reading a video game design for dummies, which was given to me by my partner, which I'm very, very grateful for. And we will be reading out loud so that I can practice being a better articulate person, or a more articulate person. Currently we have left off on page 13 in chapter 1, and unfortunately I didn't read yesterday. I left it too late, and then it was too late, and I just decided I would do a longer form video today. Hope that's okay. We'll be reading for at least 40 minutes. So let's get into things. Setting the timer. Today is the 17th of January. It is 5:33. Let's get into it. Hey Siri, lock iPhone. So last we left off, we were doing the diving into a game designer's mind, which was using an example which they published called from the Chief Emoji Officer game, so we'll be picking up from there. So we broke up this story into chapters, which helped us do the following. Create a pattern for players. There was a summary and evaluation at the end of every chapter of the choices, kind of like a score. Increase the parody. We used a system that was like an employee evaluation, aligning with our corporate satire theme. Okay, I'm curious what they mean by parody. Because I parody something that I talk about when I'm referencing a few other things. I think it means to be like in a state of like normality. But let's see. Parody, let's use definition, Cambridge Dictionary. So parody is a noun, and it means writing, music, art, speech, etc. that intentionally copies the style of someone famous or copies a particular situation, making the features or qualities of the original more noticeable in a way that is more humorous, or something that so obviously fails to achieve the effect that was intended. Interesting. Any other? Okay. To copy something or someone in a humorous way. So to parody, so that's parody is a verb. So to parody something is to copy something in a humorous way, right? So I'm sure we'll learn a bit more about parody potentially over the next few things. But I don't quite understand. I feel, because what I'm familiar with is like parody establishes like a norm, and then if you break parody, you try and uniquely break that norm, but intentionally copies the style of features or qualities more of the original, more noticeable in a way that's humorous. So it's like calling attention to noticeable tendencies of a particular style. Okay, interesting. I definitely didn't know what parody was. That's interesting. So it's imitation with exaggeration, humor, and kind of like a mocking sense, I believe. Okay, got it. Moving on. Create a sense of progression. So what were we talking about? We were talking about story. Okay, breaking up the story into chapters, and this is the story of this Chief Emoji Officer game. Create a sense of progression. As players moved from chapter to chapter, they discovered more unlockable content. Write the story more quickly. Well, faster is how that probably should be written. We didn't risk an overwrite of each other's work. We worked on separate chapters, resulting in less time to finish chapter. That's really smart, actually, as opposed to having people write a chapter and then having someone else write the chapter with them, like do a second take for writing that chapter. Just have every person on the team write a chapter. It seems very, very smart. Game designers are thinking about everything from the feel of the tap of a button to how a story unfolds to the big twist, to a big twist. Game designers are thinking about everything from the feel of the tap of a button to how a story unfolds to reveal a big twist. My favorite game designers have been analytical, scrappy, and ready to build something to test their ideas. They're often thinking about how to prototype an idea, to experiment and try it out quickly. This may mean You sketch something on paper, make a spreadsheet to test some game data, or even build something in a game engine. Learn more about prototyping in Chapter 4, which we have covered in previous videos, or what is in Chapter 4, but just as a little refresher. Chapter 4 is titled just Becoming a Game Designer, and has 3 key subdivisions of that, which is learning what it takes to be a game designer, putting your ideas on paper, and moving from hobbyist to an industry. And I can see that prototyping would make sense to be inside that chapter. How will players perceive something, and how will it make them feel? For example, will a bright red button make players feel urgency? Does the sound effect of them collecting an item feel satisfying? Chapter 10 covers creating an engaging user experience. Okay, well, we haven't gone over what's in Chapter 10, so let's see what's in Chapter 10. Creating a user experience, an engaging user experience. That's defining the user experience in games, finding out who will play your game, designing for your players, designing interfaces, and looking at examples of user experiences in games. That makes sense to me. How to improve features and systems based on feedback from playtesting. If players consistently get lost in a level, designers may tweak the environment to add better directions. Learn more about this in Chapter 12. Okay, so what's Chapter 12? Let's see. Chapter 12 is analyzing feedback and making adjustments. And there's several chapters. Knowing when to start playtesting, exploring types of playtesting, finding people to playtest, questioning playtesters, observing playtesters, sorting through the feedback, and iterating on your game. Now, I will admit that I think that the idea or concept of playtesting is really interesting, and yeah, I think that's very, very fascinating, that like how it all works and like what you're doing and then why you're doing it. How to use data to inform decision making. If analytics show that most players quit at level 5, for example, designers may analyze the difficulty curve and adjust enemy strength, add a checkpoint, or improve tutorial clarity. Chapter 12 further discusses analyzing data and why it's important to decision making. Give me a second, I just had to pop up here. Okay, we're good. Remember. Okay, that's what the remember. Remember is highlighting information that's especially important to you. Remember, it's important that as a game designer to be creative while also being practical. Have big ideas, but be ready to trim them down to something more realistic and feasible. There may possibly be a compromise. Now, why did I think that was possibility? I'm not too sure. There may possibly be a compromise to that online. Multiplayer game. There may possibly be a compromise to that online. Multiplayer game you want to make as your first game and something you'll be able to complete in a few months. It's important as a game designer to be creative while also being practical. Have big ideas, but then be ready to trim them down to something more realistic and feasible. There may possibly be a compromise to that online. To that online multiplayer game. That's really interesting, actually. I was wondering why my syntax there, the way I was saying syntax. I'm going to make sure I'm using syntax correctly when I say that. Syntax. Syntax. Okay. Syntax is assortment of words, phrases, create meaningful sentences. Okay, grammatical rules, yeah. So this used a hyphen, so with online and multiplayer, and I was saying online, like space multiplayer, as opposed to online multiplayer, which was why that sentence was, because when I was reading it, it was, there may possibly be a compromise to that online multiplayer game you want to make as your first game. And I was like, that doesn't, there may possibly be a compromise to that online multiplayer game you want to make as your first game, but something that you'll be able to complete in a few months. So yeah, so the difference there was I was saying online multiplayer is like a space, and it does not need a space, and it does not make sense if you say it with a space. That is good to know. I'm just checking something. Yeah, okay, awesome. We can go back to the black screen on the black. There we go. Oops. Constructing your first game. I'm excited for you to pour through this book and learn some theory and lots of practical knowledge on how to make games. This book may expose you to some resources you didn't know about before, and start you in a direction toward whatever specific niche of game you're interested in making. I'm excited for you to pour through this book and learn some theory and lots of practical knowledge on how to make games. This book may expose you to some resources you didn't know about before, and start you in a direction toward whatever specific niche of game you're interested in making. That read much better. This book focuses on smaller teams and solo developers who want to make their first game. I include information from larger teams that I've been on and had the most fun and got to experiment the most on. This book focuses on smaller teams and solo developers who want to make their first game. I include information from larger teams that I've been on, but I had the most fun and got to experiment the most on a team of 2. Bodaville, an independent game studio I co-founded with a friend. Chapter 3 provides an overview to the game design process, and Chapter 14 takes a deeper dive into that process. If you're at the very beginning of your game making journey, however, you can take these steps to get started. So we'll just see what Chapter 3 and 14 are real quick before we get into what the 3 steps are they want us to have a look at to get started. So we've got Chapter 3, overviewing the game design process, which is exploring the phases of a game's design, setting design intentions and managing scope. That's very much reminiscent of what it was mentioning before about what your first online multiplayer game might want to be versus what it can actually be produced as in a couple of months. And then Chapter 14 is all about following a step-by-step game design process. So this is designing from concept to launch, acquiring the skills needed to launch, accepting the final release, so that's versus what you envisioned, iterating on your designs, and improving through player feedback. Got it. And then the 3 steps to get started in game design are: do your research as number 1. Check out similar games in the genre you're looking to make. Throughout the book, I often recommend that you research other games, but I dive into it in some detail in Chapter 4, which we've already covered, which covers what you need to know to become a game designer. And it's probably also just titled What You Need to Know to Become a Game Designer. Number 2, make a prototype. This can be in a game engine like Unity, in a spreadsheet, or maybe even using paper on a table. Having a prototype allows you to fully explore the viability of your concepts. Chapter 5 covers tools and software. Chapter 13 covers refining your concept. Chapter 5 is game design tools and software, gathering design tools, learning project management. Those are the 2 main overarching ones. Okay. And then 3, playtest it with your friends or peers. Testing it early will get you quick feedback. Testing it early will get you quick feedback to let you know what's working and what can be improved. Chapter 12 has details about this very important part of the process. Have we covered what Chapter 12 was? I'm just going to have a little look. Chapter 12. Analyzing feedback and making adjustments. This was about the playtesting. Yeah, we have done that. Cool. Maybe you have already started your game design journey and are looking for insight for what point you're at. If one of the following points describes you, then check out the corresponding chapter to help you with that phase. You have an idea for a game you're really excited about and want to flesh out the story. Story and characters are important. Players will make an... Pardon me. Players will make an emotional connection to your game if you have a great story. Check out Chapter 8 for details about developing a story for your game that delivers a unique experience for players. Chapter 8 is incorporating story in games, telling a story, designing worlds. Those are the 2 main sub-chapters. You've already started developing your concept in a game engine and you're almost finished but hitting some roadblocks. Maybe you're struggling with scope, polish, or final tweaks. Chapter 15 covers strategies for getting to the finish line, prioritizing features, and managing your development process. Have we covered Chapter 15? I don't think we have. Finishing your game. We have not covered this. Avoiding the top reasons your games don't finish, making decisions for your game, estimating for learning curves, keeping your game in budget, designing a routine, a survival guide, managing your time, staying consistent, and improving your productivity. You have a game almost finished, but it needs tips on publishing and marketing. Once the game is built, you need people to play it. Chapter 16 dives into marketing strategies, including how to promote your game and build an audience. For details and publishing options like self-publishing or working with a publisher, check out Chapter 17. Okay, let's see. Chapter 17. Deciding how to publish a game. So publishing a game, deciding how to publish a game, and publishing a game on different platforms. Okay. Was that the only I think they mentioned Chapter 16 as well, right? Yeah, Chapter 16 is getting your game noticed, making games in this market is hard, understanding marketing and its importance, building a marketing plan, optimizing for discoverability, and preparing to launch a game, giving your game life after launch. Cool. Again, sorry if I'm not sure who's actually listening along with this. It may just be some people. But I like to, when something is mentioned, I like to clarify what that thing is so that I can really understand what it's directing me to. I hope that's okay. You have a game concept but don't know what tools to use to get started. Choosing the right tools can be overwhelming, but Chapter 5 breaks down different game engines, design tools, and software options to help you get started. The most important thing is just to get started. Have an open mind. Some things may not turn out like you expect them to, and they may turn out even better if you have an open mind to feedback and iteration. When in doubt, make a prototype. Cool. Also, I just want to get a little something off my head because I just feel it and it's distracting me. I don't know if I want to keep publishing these on this kind of hidden, secret, completely whatever YouTube channel. I do have other ones that go under my main profile, which is Briz. Hi, I'm Briz. And I feel like I should probably, again, just thinking about what kind of Kai's doing with his whole, part of it is his sewing, part of it is his workouts, part of it is his, reading. I feel like maybe I should be doing that over there, so I'm gonna have a think about it. If I do, I will upload all these videos over there, but we will see what I decide to do. Chapter 2, knowing why your game matters. In this chapter, exploring why game design matters, digging into what keeps players motivated and why, learning what a meaningful experience is, considering the legal and ethical parts of game design, and then, so, knowing why game design matters. And we're in Chapter 2! We're in Chapter 2! We read a chapter! I haven't read a chapter of a book in years. We've read a chapter! That's awesome. Just checking. Okay, it looks like about 18 minutes have passed. That's good. Okay. Game design is the art of taking a bunch of random features and making them actually work together. Without it, you have a mess of different features with no real connection. The leaderboard here, some achievements there, and maybe some point systems, and maybe a point system thrown in for good measure. A leaderboard here, some achievements there, and a leaderboard here, some achievements there, maybe a point system thrown in for good measure. This chapter shows how game design holds everything together. I cover why features need to work with each other, not just exist in the same game, how to make systems feel meaningful, and why understanding what motivates players makes all the difference. Game design is the glue of games. Game design is a practice is the art of gluing a bunch of features together to make something cohesive that has meaning. To do this, you'll want to define rules, mechanics, objectives, and generally why a feature or a thing in the game exists. When a project designer, or just anyone dedicated to focusing on design, isn't present in a project. Okay, I'm showing it continues the sentence. When a game designer, and it's in parentheses, or anyone dedicated to focusing on design. So when a game designer isn't present in a project, I've seen it turn out the same way every time. A bunch of different features are thrown together that don't work well together. Having been hired as an early/founding designer quite a few times, I've seen it often. But the point of hiring a designer is to have someone to focus on making the mess of features have meaning and exist cohesively and deliver a fantasy to the player. Anyone can do it. It's just about having the dedication to focus on it and the willpower to make hard decisions and cut anything meaningless from the experience. Game design isn't about how well you can talk about these things. Game design isn't about how well you can talk about how these things are glued together. Game design is the act of designing systems that work together by creating patterns, defining how interactions work, creating charts, and writing out content in spreadsheets. Among many other design tasks, the act of designing also means finding the right conceit or fantasy and making sure all the features work within this conceit for the user. The designer's job is to add meaning to all of these features so that the user is never taken out of the fantasy of the world you're creating. Conceit, that's what we're looking up. What is a conceit? Conceit. We go to a dictionary, or a thesaurus, Cambridge Dictionary. Conceit as a noun is the state of being too proud of yourself and your actions. Or the habit or attitude of thinking yourself better than others even when there is no reason to think so. So someone being conceited would be someone who thinks a bit too highly of themselves without any justification for it. And so the act of designing also means finding the right conceit or fantasy. So conceit as like the subject, what does that mean? What is it trying to refer to? Let's see if I can find another dictionary definition. Because fuck AI, we don't give a fuck about AI. Okay, we've got some others. A fanciful idea or notion, an artistic device or effect, an elaborate poetic image, or far-fetched comparison. Okay. Okay, so in that case, yeah, a conceit or fantasy, I could see that the conceit in this context is the artistic device or effect. So the act of designing also means finding the right artistic device or effect or fantasy and making sure the features work within this artistic device or effect for the user. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes more sense to me, because I was like, are they trying to use, they wouldn't use a word that's synonymous with fantasy as like conceit or fantasy. That would make sense. So I was wondering what conceit meant. Now I know what conceit means, and that's good. That is very good. Because I was like, I was also like, it doesn't really make sense if conceit being taken as the I'm boasting or I'm thinking highly of myself, then why would, design have something to do with how highly conceited or how to get the right kind of conceitedness of your features to work? I was like, that doesn't make sense if you're using conceit as the notion of being conceited, of being arrogant or preposterous in your claims. In any case. Imagine a piece of I want to make sure I did get that right? Yeah. Designing also means finding the right conceit, so the flashiness of your fantasy, or fantasy and making sure all the features work within this conceit for the user. So yeah, the conceit is the like flair or the how did they define it again? It was conceit being the artistic device or effect. So as long as everything's working within the artistic device or effect, that's good. Imagine a piece of software that has the following features: a leaderboard to show players who did well, achievements to reward certain actions, a point system to measure success. Individually, these may seem like great features, but without a connection between them, they don't add up to much. It's the way these features are connected that makes the software meaningful, useful, and cohesive. Instead of thinking about each feature in isolation, consider how they work together to create a better user experience. Why did I put user? There's no user isn't here. There's no. It just says, where are we? Here, a better experience. There's no user. I could just put user in that. Anyway, let's try that again. It's the way these features are connected that makes the software meaningful, useful, and cohesive. Instead of just thinking about each feature in isolation, consider how they work together to create a better experience. Yes! Woo! Why the leaderboard motivates players to continue playing. Why certain actions grant achievements. Why players want to score points. Next to consider, there's a whole 2 words there I didn't read. Next to consider is what falls within a feature to make it work. Does the leaderboard refresh weekly to give everyone a fair shot, or does it track lifetime scores? Do achievements reward discovery or encourage perfecting? Do achievements reward discovery or encourage perfecting a skill? Can players track their points, and how do they understand how they contribute to their position on the leaderboard? To design how these things work together, you'll need to map out how they work by creating the following. Yes, good, well done. A diagram or chart to define how the leaderboard should behave, like what causes it to refresh. A list and categorization of achievements and their content. A spreadsheet of how many points players can collect over time and from which actions. There's no one perfect way to glue all the elements of your experience together, and no one will be able to tell you the perfect solution to what problem you're facing when you're designing something. It all depends. It depends on the choices you've made as a developer up until whatever problem you're trying to solve. It depends on the elements and constraints that exist within your game and the technology you're using to make it. It's very strange. What it feels like is like I'm trying to create words to fill in what I'm saying, but I'm not. It's like, so when I'm reading, I'm like going across the line. I'm reading all the elements, and then I'm saying them, and there's a bit of a delay. I can feel it. It's like there is no one perfect way to glue all the elements of your experience together, and it's almost like my mouth is trying to put words that I'm not yet reading into what I'm saying. It's very interesting. It's not like I'm seeing words that aren't there. I'm saying words that aren't there. So I think what I need to do is slow down my speech. Not necessarily speed up my like reading, if that makes sense. I think I need to slow down my speech so that my speech isn't trying to override what I'm reading. Many people have given me feedback on my games over the years, pointed out potential solutions, or said, it would have been great if you added X, but they weren't there when it was made, and they don't know how the trade-offs or constraints that were present while it was being designed. And they don't know the trade-offs or constraints that were present while it's being designed. Your special concoction of glue is unique to your creation and what game design is. It's really strange. Yeah, you see it there? Like I'm definitely reading like that's That's what game design is. I didn't say that, did I? That's what game design is. I didn't, actually, that's interesting. I don't know if I said that. In which case, I didn't read that. I just skipped it and went to what? Interesting. By the way, this isn't like a new thing necessarily. I remember when I was a kid and I was doing reading for school projects, that would be something that would happen as well. But it's really interesting now that I'm trying to articulate myself and become more in tune with reading as a habit and speaking in a meaningful way that measures my words and understands the use of the words that I'm using. How the act of reading and then articulating read sentences sometimes has errors for me specifically. And that's not a bad thing, it's just something I've noticed. We've got a tip here. This is a shortcut to make the design process easier. I say the word meaningful often in this book. When I say meaningful, I mean that a thing like a player's choice or a developer's choice can be interpreted, potentially has a pattern, and has an obvious reason for existing. So, for example, imagine you're a developer and you added flying to your game. To make flying meaningful, you'd need to use flying for something in that experience. Maybe to reach a higher place, skip traffic, or to combat an enemy. Without a reason to fly, you don't need this feature. Looking at examples of game design, to see how game design acts as the glue that holds games together, I'm highlighting the following games that have features coming together to create cohesive experiences. Tetris. The glue in Tetris is the way the speed, spatial reasoning, and scoring interlock to create a satisfying, challenging experience. At first glance, Tetris is a straightforward game. The blocks fall, then you fit them together to clear lines. The blocks fall at an increasing speed, creating pressure. Simple controls allow for focus on strategy rather than execution. Clearing lines and scoring points are the primary goals, but the real hook is the increasing challenge as the pace picks up. Dark Souls, a game known for being difficult, but the challenge is meaningful. The difficulty feels fair because every death teaches the player something, making each victory hard-earned and satisfying. Portal. Portal's glue... They didn't mention what the glue was, though. They didn't say what the glue of Dark Souls was. This is a thing all about glue. They don't use the word glue. Known for being difficult, challenge is meaningful. I think the glue for Dark Souls games is accepting that you're always the same level of strength no matter what. The glue of a Dark Souls game is the realization that no amount of progress changes. For me, like the glue of a Dark Souls game is like the mentality shift. It is the going from being someone who is capable, who's incapable of dealing with adversity to someone who is willing to be beaten down into the ground by a fictional obstacle for the sake of the obstacle, for the sake of the love of the obstacle, of challenging the obstacle. That's what the glue for Dark Souls is. It's not the game is inherently unfair. It's that you're bad. The glue to me of Dark Souls games is that perception shift that you get when you realize you as a fact or an entity do not need anything more than who you are to beat the game. Everything it hands you from level 1 can be used to completely beat, I think, every Souls game. And that realization that, there is no amount of safety that going through levels can get you, that's the glue of the game to me. Like, you can die to dogs in any game at any point, but you may have beaten the final boss of any game. And like, that's still an interesting dichotomy. So like the glue of the game, for me, the glue of Dark Souls as a game would be that death teaches you to practice hardship. Oh, I fucking nailed that. Yeah, death teaches you to death in game teaches you to practice hardship in a very safe space. And that, by the way, that's something that is incredibly important, I think, in today's day and age, where there's so much horrific stuff going on, that practicing hardship in a safe space is a good thing. Because we all go through, like, horrible and difficult and terrible things throughout our life, but our life is beautiful. And Dark Souls teaches you that through the safe practice of hardship, the willingness for you to practice hardship in a game, someplace that doesn't really matter, with no real stakes to you, through practicing that hardship and overcoming it, you can overcome any challenge that you can physically put yourself to that is possible for you. You know, because in Dark Souls, every boss is possible to beat, just as you start the game. And as long as that same game design is true for you in real life, then there is no obstacle that you cannot overcome, either with time or just knowing better. I think that's really beautiful. Anyway, moving on, because we've got like 4 minutes. Portal. Portal's glue is between the storytelling and gameplay, where every element serves players' progress and deepens the game world. The portal gun allows players to be creative and think with portals, in quotation marks. A tip. When I'm stuck trying to make a feature or system work with other systems that have meaning, I typically look at what other games in the genre are doing and cut the fat. If you've got a bunch of features, try to focus on just one, make it work really well, and then remove some of the extra stuff. Yeah, makes sense. Understanding player motivations. People play games because they're motivated by the system and goals that, my goodness, they interact with. Maybe it's the thrill of exploration, the satisfaction of achievement, or the joy of mastery. As a designer, part of your role is training players to understand how the game rewards them and when they'll encounter punishment or friction in the gameplay. Another tip. When you're solving problems in game development, it can be easy to lose sight of putting player motivations at the forefront of game design. To keep the proper perspective, step back every now and then to look at how your systems work together to integrate levers used to keep players motivated. I'm not sure if I'd use the word levers there, but are they going to go into what a lever is in this example? No? Just a tip? Okay. I mean, I'll just look up the definition of a lever again. Or a lever. It is right. I am saying the right word, right? Levers. Yeah. Okay. You lever someone with something in a place, you move a great physical. To change the situation or to suit yourself, you're often using unfair methods. Okay, it's to lever something. Step back every now and then and look at how your systems work together to integrate levers used to keep players motivated. I don't know. I actually don't have a fucking clue what they're trying to say there. Because a lever is the contraption used to handle a machine, but it's also used, right? Because if you're thinking about levers, it makes it easier to move things, right? So I'm not sure if it's trying to say, like, you know, how levers in physics, the further away it is, you know, like, you give me a point and I can move the world, or whatever the quote is, right? Or if it's saying that, like, there's like a bunch of switches on a wall and you got to see which switches are up and which are down to know what levers are helping keeping your players motivated. I think it's the second one. Okay, we got 1 more minute, so let's finish this up. Because I can tell that I'm getting a little bit fatigued here. To create a motivating experience, you'll want to include the following. A long-term goal, this enables players to know where they're going and have something to look forward to. For example, completing the main storyline in a role-playing game or unlocking a cool item after hours of gameplay. A short-term goal, this helps players feel accomplished while progressing towards the bigger picture. For example, finishing a quest, collecting resources, or leveling up a character. Rewards, nothing like a nice treat or a carrot dangle to get you to do something. For example, completing a difficult puzzle may unlock a hidden area or rare item and make the effort feel worthwhile. Punishment or friction. Little challenges make the reward even sweeter. For example, dying when falling off a platform forces the player to think more about what jumps they'll take. And these concepts aren't just for games. You may notice that your company's career ladder has levels. The paycheck is a sort of short-term goal. Is the short-term goal, not sort. The paycheck is the short-term goal. And your next promotion has been dangled right in front of you. Friction, oh, that's just your manager telling you that you're not promoted this half, but you'll get it next time. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Personally, I'm not into corporate indoctrination, but yeah, fair enough. That puts us at time. I actually set this timer for 1 hour. That's why it hasn't gone off, as you can see here. I set it for 1 hour. But I can just tell by the way my words are slurring. This is the longest I've read in years. In well over 7 years. I'm very impressed with what I've been doing. Okay, let's put a pin in it there. We're on page 21. We're about to go into the psychological aspects of gaming. It's currently 6:14. I've been reading for about 40 minutes. That's to cover yesterday that I missed and today as well. So that's that. I'm not sure if I will... Again, I don't know if I want to put these on my main account or not anymore, but I'm just more attached to that one. But this has been nice, and I will just keep uploading these regardless. If I do choose to do so, they will all go over there anyway. But seriously, thank you guys so much. Stay well, stay safe. This has been an absolute privilege, and again, I just really want to thank Kai Cenat for just popping up on my Twitter feed a few days ago with videos of him reading, and that was the spark I needed to start reading myself. So, massive thank you to him. I wish him all the best with what he's doing. For you, thank you so much. Stay well, stay safe, and we're going to clock out there. So, see you soon.